Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update, the first part thereof for the 2nd of September 2025. We're going to start with Ukraine's General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course, to these numbers. 800 personnel lost is one of the lowest we have seen for some time. One single tank, 4 troop-carrying AFVs, so very low numbers across those categories, and 53 artillery systems added, so that's a big number there, pretty much twice the daily average. 1 multiple launch rocket system, and 89 vehicles and fuel tanks below the 100 threshold we're used to seeing, so a mixed bag there. There have been some videos coming out of some pretty crazy losses. I have a feeling that they were probably added to yesterday's stats because the IFVs, the infantry fighting vehicle number yesterday was fairly high. And I think the videos you're seeing published were probably submitted to the General Staff the previous day and then uploaded to the internet. So we look at the data from yesterday and we look at the actual raw data. These are Dell stats that he does on a daily basis. Thank you to him for doing this. We can see that the stats for the 1st of September in terms of AFVs was 17. So it's gone 2, 17, 4. So you had a real spike yesterday. So the question is, what happened yesterday? Well, actually, we've got some video evidence to show you what happened yesterday, and there was quite a lot of activity, quite a lot of things getting blown up. Also, 850 personnel lost yesterday. That's a slight uptick from the day before and today. So you've got, in terms of personnel losses, you have, we've been seeing it in the 800s, 900s occasionally, even down to 700 there. But last 3 days, it's gone 810, 850, 800. So yesterday seemed to be a little bit of a spike. Okay, let's get there in a second. According to South Korean intelligence, around 2,000 North Koreans have been killed in the Russia-Ukraine war. We heard previously, was there 4,000 casualties, 2,000 killed. I don't know what to make of that number. There were claimed to be anywhere between 10 and 15,000 North Koreans operating. There now could be more might have been sent. There are all sorts of rumors, no real confirmation as you would expect of that. But if indeed 2,000 had died out of 14,000, 1 in 7 soldiers dying, I guess that's a pretty high number. But yeah, I don't quite know what to make of that entirely. Let me know your thoughts. Right, Ukrainian partisans coordinate. No, right, I'm going to rewind a bit. I said a throwaway comment on my live stream last night. Please check it out. Good update, if you don't mind me saying so myself, of military aid and geopolitical news. But I said, look, there's some data at the moment to suggest Ukraine are having a fairly successful time at the moment, certainly of hitting targets deep inside Russia, but also targets in occupied territories. Crimea has been absolutely rinsed lately as the Ukrainian drones have been striking individual bits of equipment. And air bases and railway logistics have been hit there, railway logistics right throughout occupied territories and into Russia. And then you've had a number of precision strikes that have been taking place recently. It's definitely been notable that there have been a number of claims to suggest that Ukraine are hurting the Russians, if these are to be trusted. Now, here's one. Ukrainian partisans coordinating with special forces have blown up a large Russian command post far behind the front line in a town of Voskresenka. It's reported a significant amount of Russian officers have been killed. Now, we heard that there were 8 Russian FSB officers killed in Belgorod, but that's not here. So that was a significant loss. And whenever you have 8 dead, of course, the question is how many wounded. Here, the claim that a significant amount of Russian officers have been killed at Voskresenka. Then we hear this is a different one. On August the 30th, Ukraine's defense intelligence and the Mariupol resistance, well, maybe this is Voskresenka, but it seems to be a different named place here, but it is talking about resistance and Ukraine's defense intelligence. Could be the same, might not be. Carried out a joint operation that destroyed a Russian command post in a village of Kinsky Rozdory in Zaporizhia region. And according to advisor Petro Andriushenko, the strike killed 17 enemy officers and 1 enlisted soldier. Probably is the same one, isn't it? But different names of places there. But I mean, that is significant. If you've taken out 17 officers and 1 enlisted soldier, you have beheaded the command in that area. That is really significant. Then we see a number of montage videos that really have shown quite a bit of destruction of equipment. Soldiers of 118th Separate Motorized Mechanized Brigade, have released footage of a repelled Russian mechanized assault near Malotokmachka, Zaporizhia region. So think about the Robotyne area, the area where the Ukrainians attacked most significantly in the May 2023 counteroffensive. They didn't get very far because they attacked in the strongest position. Lots of criticisms of that. But that's where the Russians are trying to push at the moment, sporadically. During the battle, Russian forces lost 2 tanks, 5 infantry fighting vehicles, a Tiger armored vehicle, and suffered 22 KIA and 14 wounded in action. So fairly significant losses in that one attack there, and you can go and watch these. They're all linked in the description below, just in case you want to see things getting blown up. But the evidence is there for these claims, at least for the vehicles. HIMARS and FPVs struck an assault column in the Pokrovsk direction, and it looks like the Russians are claiming they're pushing into the center of Pokrovsk from the south again, where deep reconnaissance groups had infiltrated the urban areas to the south. They were then cleaned out. Russians are claiming they're pushing in, although take that with a pinch of salt. There are claims that the Ukrainians are having success to the east of there by attacking into Nova Ekonomicha and Myrna, and they could be working to slice off the Russians in that whole sector. Go and watch Scruffy Tales and his analysis of that. That could be why the Russians have pulled out of Sumy and have brought their troops into that neck of the woods, which is interesting because the Russians claim they have 100,000 troops in the Pokrovsk sector. If that's the case, you shouldn't really need to pull in huge amounts of troops from Sumy to bolster your numbers there. So either they've lost numbers or they're finding it too difficult to break Pokrovsk. Are they pushing deep in, right into the city of Pokrovsk? That would be interesting. But at the same time, the Ukrainians are having success further to the east and cutting Russians off. So lots going on there. And in the middle of this, we have Russia's 155th Brigade. So this isn't the Ukrainian 155th, who are also operating in the area. They're the French-trained brigade. This is a naval infantry brigade of the Russians that had been up in Sumy. So if they're the ones that have lost huge amounts here, then they've had an absolute tonking everywhere they've gone. Like Vuhledar, Sumy, Pokrovsk, they're getting tonked again. I don't think they're the crack unit they are supposed to be. As a result, apparently, Russia's 155th Brigade lost between 50 and 100 personnel and 7 pieces of heavy equipment. That is, again, caught on camera on various bits of drone footage here. It's obviously difficult to confirm the personnel losses, but the equipment losses are fairly obvious to work out. And here, Rene Duba says, a 10-kilometer Russian convoy consisting of tanks, armored personnel carriers, motorcycles, and some 100 infantry moving towards Pokrovsk were destroyed today by 2 HIMARS strikes and FPV drones. Interesting that HIMARS are being used with FPVs. So adding the HIMARS aspect here, result is that 50 casualties and all vehicles were destroyed. So this is, I presume, the same claim, although same video watermark, so I can't find that image on the video, but nonetheless, probably again the same thing going on there. Russians taking a bit of a tonking. Then we see, and I think this is different from the previous one, there was another grain elevator that was hit in the attempt to take out Russian drone operators. Here the entire elevator is collapsed. It could be the same one but struck again. These are guided glide bombs being used by the Ukrainians to strike on drone operators' bases in the Kherson region. That is a really significant hit. The entire building collapses, and you know that the Russians are giving the Ukrainian civilians hell there in the human safari at Kherson with their drones committing rampant murders. The Ukrainians trying to fight back and take out those drone operators. There's another example of that happening. And Ukrainian guide bomb news brings us, well, this is status 6, saying Ukrainian MiG-29 shown here appears to have under its wing an analog of the Russian-guided aerial bomb, the UMPK. In June 2025, it became publicly known that Ukraine began testing what can be considered to be the analog of the Russian UMPK munition guidance kit, which saw widespread use by the Russian Air Force since 2023. I reported on this. We talked about this. The last I heard that these would be worth about, they cost about $25,000, which is much cheaper than the French provided ones and to some degree the American provided ones, although the French provided ones are really, really good bits of kit. If the Ukrainians can provide a lot of cheap and cheerful guided glide bombs, then this is really going to help them out in hammering the Russian forces. The initial Ukrainian carrier platform for this munition was a Su-24 attack plane. This is the first time it's been installed on a MiG-29 fighter jet. Interesting there. So that could be good news for the Ukrainians. Now, talking about guided glide bombs, there are new stats out from the Defense Ministry that the Russians have increased their usage of carb strikes on Ukraine. So their own guided glide bombs have been the scourge of the Ukrainians. The Russian army used 4,390 of these in August. That's up from 3,786 in July, which itself was down from the highest rate in April of over 5,000. So something happened after April. Were the planes afraid to fly so far forward in a number of positions? Were having had this degradation of Russian air defense systems? Could it be that the supply of those bombs was hit? Whatever it was, we know that some of the air bases had munitions warehouses here, and a number of these bombs may have gone up in smoke. So that could be one of the reasons as well. But whatever it is, it dipped in July, but now seems to be creeping back up to really significant levels. That's a worry for the Ukrainians. The Russian State Duma member Viktor Sobolev has once again voiced imperial ambition. So when we want to know what the Russians are aiming at, what their objectives are, just listen to what they say. Listen to what their politicians say. He's claiming that regions like Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv and Odessa are part of Russia and must be fully liberated as part of the so-called special military operation. So we have had Putin in the SCO in Tianjin in China saying that meeting with all these ne'er-do-well leaders, including Robert Fico today from Slovakia. Let's talk about that later. Putin has come out and reiterated maximalist claims. Now, in that context, where has Trump been? Trump has been absent. I've been doing all these videos on his health issues. There's been an announcement, actually not like formally announced, but suddenly it's appeared on the agenda that Trump is going to be making an announcement at 2:00, I think, local time today from the White House. So if you, like me, think that something funky has been going on, he's suddenly put in a White House announcement, 2:00. So watch this space. There will be an announcement by Donald Trump at 2:00 today. What, 2:00 US time? What will that be? It might be about something completely random. It might be about tariffs. But considering he's been absent for 8 days, all of these rumors have been swirling. There are pictures of him looking not great. And then suddenly there's an announcement that he will make an address to the nation. But the reason I say that is put it in context, which is that maybe Putin has recognized that Trump has been absent for 8 days. But Putin has gone back to maximalist objectives. So he wants the root causes to be sorted out: demilitarization, denazification of Ukraine. And then we hear Duma members saying, yep, we're going to get Odessa, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv and Sumy. I mean, they're really going much more maximalist. And then we see that map that was behind Gerasimov. So the Russian map behind top General Gerasimov, who's in charge of the war, hints at ambitions to seize Odessa and Kharkiv. While Moscow has publicly insisted on full control of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhzhia Oblast, the map indicated possible plans extending to Odessa and Kharkiv. So this is very, very worrying. Although it's not insanely clear, let's open it in the next tab. We understand that they see all of this as Russian territory, and that is going back to these maximalist objectives. And then you're thinking, well, that surely means they don't give a damn about peace negotiations. This is sticking two fingers up to the United States, to Trump, really, saying, well, you talk about tariffs, it's never going to happen, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 week. We're just going to go back to saying the same old things that we've said since, well, I don't know, a long time ago. As if like Trump's administration has been meaningless in terms of shifting the narrative at all in this war. Wow. So the Russians are going full on maximalist. Or, you know, if not full, I mean, full maximalists will be taking control of the entirety of Ukraine. But this is like realistic maximalist, except I don't think it's even realistic. I don't think they can get across the Dnipro River to take this land mass, that land corridor down to Odessa. But that's what their maps indicate. So meanwhile, in Russia, a Russian emergency ministry helicopter with volcanologists on board has crashed in the Kuril Islands. Although this is nothing to do with the war, it's another helicopter crashing, showing that aviation is in trouble, possibly, or maybe just pilot error, or who knows. But yeah, the helicopter going down there in the east. And we also have Russia on fire again. There are such a number of significant fires in Russia. It is clearly anomalous. In fact, Rebar, the pro-Russian source, stated back in, I think, even 2022 to 2023, that there was an anomalous amount of fires, and they were not just statistically more prevalent at that time, but the types of places that were going up were also significant. In other words, this is something to do with the war. So all these Russia on fire incidences, there was another massive fire near Moscow the other day, wasn't there? There was another chemicals factory on fire. Here we've got a Yaroslavl region fire and explosions in the city's industrial zone. Emergency services say automotive chemicals, battery packs and plastic containers are burning. Now, no definite connection to the war there. We don't know that that's hit by drones. There are no claims to that end, although it might have been, and it might be a military target for the Ukrainians. But at the very least, it's Russia on fire again. And that is happening to a significant degree at the moment, as it has really throughout the war. Now, going to distant strikes, these numbers are not quite accurate because the attacks were still going on this morning. There are daytime attacks this morning in Kyiv with Shahid drones. But anyway, so indeed, if we go back to Tim White's initial comment from his thread today, first thing to say is that Kyiv is under attack again right now from Russian Shaheds or strike drones. Air defense is working on the left bank east of the capital right now. The town of Tserkov, so that has been hammered quite a lot recently. There must be something there that the Russians are going for. That was hit last night and it's continuing to be hit today. So in the south of the region, it was hit during the night and could be struck again. Indeed, it is being struck again, I believe. So by 8 a.m, before the latest drone attack, Ukraine had shot down 120 of the 150 Russian long-range drones. That's 80% interception rate, but still 30 drones getting through 9 different places, and debris caused damage in 5 locations. So you have typical striking footage like this. Worst damage overnight came in Tserkva, where a man's body was discovered as emergency crews tackled a huge fire in the south of the Kyiv region. And that's a sort of imagery coming out from there. Pretty horrific strikes on that settlement. Fires in Tserkva have now been extinguished. A garage cooperative was hit, as well as a 3-story business building. So really hammering Ukraine's economy a lot, the Russians, in their strikes. These commercial sectors getting hit repeatedly. We'll return to Ukraine's economy in a second, a bit later. So the situation in Kyiv, as you see, it's the morning. Russian drones are flying over the capital. No news of strikes. They're heading south, around 10 of them. So they could be heading over Kyiv to hit Tserkva, for example. Second video was shot in Pozniaki. Drones are very low flying and still ongoing. What else do we have? Sumy suffered most in terms of injuries. 10 victims reported up there. Youngest is a 14-year-old girl. Shopping mall was destroyed by 1 a.m. attacks, and 4 apartment blocks were also badly damaged. So again, commercial property being hit and residential property too. So Odessa was also attacked. Drone attacks on 2 ports in the region. Substation in Chornomorsk, which is one of these ports, was hit, knocking out power supplies to the ports, and many in Odessa. Over 15,000 homes in Odessa have been reconnected to the power grid, but many are still without electricity. They do an amazing job of kind of remedying these problems as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, over in Izmail on the Danube River, a man aged 22 is in hospital after Russian strikes. Port infrastructure and businesses were hit. No new pictures have been released yet. And then we have in Kyiv, the metros being full of people. The alert continues as air defense battles with Russian drones. Many were caught in metro stations mid-journey to work, college, or the second day of the school year. Others rushed here on hearing the siren or receiving phone alerts. So that's what's taking place in Ukraine. We have Ukraine's emergency services released images of damage caused by Russian drone strikes in Biletserkva. The attack ignited fires and caused destruction to hangars, a 3-story building elsewhere in the city. Firefighters extinguished blazes at garages and whatnot. So more pretty striking images from, that's the same one as before, but that first one from the region. So we've gone through Tim White's one there, and another one from Tim White here saying some reports of power outages in Kyiv as well, affecting some metro stations too as the air raid continues. Here though, lessons are underway for the new school year. A classroom in Ukraine's capital replaced by the nearest underground station. So this is school must continue. Every day is a school day, and even if you're stuck in a metro cowering from Shahid drones, you can still do a bit of maths and Ukrainian. Okay, Putin. We tolerated, said Putin this morning, for a long time when Ukraine struck our energy facilities. After that, we began to respond, and we are responding seriously. So this is Putin having very strong rhetoric saying we are responding to Ukraine's attacks on our energy infrastructure, and we're doing it very seriously. Now, as far as what Ukraine did last night, very little information other than Rostov was absolutely, well, I wouldn't, inundated is probably a bit too strong a word. I saw maybe, and this was last night, something like 8 different images of drones striking civilian buildings in Rostov, and I think they're not targeting civilian buildings, but a lot of them were hit last night. So I've just given you 3 there, but there were many more. Drones were obviously going over Rostov, and air defense hit them. The Russians, it appears, don't have as good, well, they probably don't have as much experience of this, given all the places around Russia and the fact that Ukraine just generally is striking at places outside of cities. There were claims the other day, or was it the other week, where the Russians were shooting stuff down just in the middle of their cities, and sort of unnecessarily so. Like they're just panicking and shooting things down, and then they come down in very sensitive areas. The Ukrainians fully understand, they're used to this now. The Shahids have been going over their cities for years, and so the Ukrainians have got used to trying to shoot these things down before they reach the cities. And then, so sometimes you see them circling around cities because they know that if they shoot them down, it'll fall in the city. So they're careful about where they shoot things down, what areas of the city they shoot things down in. I don't think the Russians have that, and their electronic warfare and air defense will happily just bring stuff down in the middle of Rostov. Taganrog was also, I think, which is fairly nearby, was a scene of similar. So the Ukrainians did attack last night, and they clearly attacked into Rostov Oblast, which is sort of down the south, as I always say, Sea of Azov, Berdyansk Port Berdyansk, Mariupol, keep going into Russia through Donetsk, and you get to Taganrog, and then you get to Rostov-on-Don. So that's the area we're talking about. That was clearly targeted, but no idea of any battle damage assessment coming out at the moment from Russia. I presume that Ukrainians were busy, but who knows? Right, moving on to other bits and pieces. So pretty quiet in that respect. The suspect in Parubi's murder. So this is a murder of the Ukrainian politician. He has confessed to the crime during interrogations and spoke about his contacts with Russia, according to Radio Liberty. This is fascinating and quite sort of sad in many respects. So the man had a son who was a serviceman who went missing in the Bakhmut direction. So he began monitoring Russian social networks to find information about his son's fate, and obviously got sucked into this, and might have been, I'm speculating here, but he might have been upset that his son had been lost in the war. So the suspect told his contacts in Russia that he lived in Lviv and told them about Andriy Paruby, whom he allegedly saw repeatedly. So he's a local politician. He obviously lives close to him, sees him regularly, and then communicates that to these Russian handlers. Continuing to communicate with representatives from Russia, he began preparing for the murder and purchased equipment and followed the politician. And then I guess the rest is history. But, more details of that will be useful to find out in terms of, what motivates these people to do what they do when they are often Ukrainians doing this, and not even in this case necessarily pro-Russian Ukrainians. There is money that can sway people. There's blackmail that can sway people. There is, in this case, potentially resentment, or I don't know, again, speculation, but you can understand there are a number of different drivers to why people do things like that. So 2 guys have been jailed for terrorism in Russia and have subsequently escaped. The pair, sentenced for trying to set fire to a military recruitment office, managed to flee via the roof in Yekaterinburg. So that's good news there. I hope they don't get caught. Good stuff. Ukraine's business optimism is growing, but only because Western partners are keeping the economic engine alive with $17.8 billion in support this year. It's a story of resilience and reliance, hope and fragility. So the Ukrainian economy is fragile, but it is surviving because of the support of allies. And this is the difference between Ukraine and Russia. Russia won't get that economic support from others in a way that Ukraine will. Ukraine is being propped up. Russia won't get propped up. So if Russia's economy tanks, they're in trouble. Now, they are at the moment in China trying to do deals, and indeed it looks like they have resurrected this Siberia 2 pipeline with China. It looks like China is going to buy more fuel off Russia. This is possibly a sign that China, Russia and India have been thrown together by maybe Trump's rhetoric and diplomacy of late. And so whereas China previously said no to the pipeline from Russia, now they're saying yes. That is a marked difference. We are also hearing, I don't think I've got it here, we're also hearing that the Ukrainian economy is doing really well in some sectors like construction. I wonder why. Things get blown up, buildings get destroyed, you need to rebuild them. So construction is doing well, but kind of industry and services and exports are not doing well generally. And so, there is that resilience in the Ukrainian economy, but there's a lot of reliance on outside assistance. Now, as far as Russia's concerned, they are still having issues with fuel. There are still these massive queues outside petrol stations. Tim White says, "High time I checked on how Russia and its occupied territories are doing for fuel." This video is from Luhansk this morning, where the problem seems most acute for the invaders in Ukraine. In Asian Russia, they ration gasoline in some places. Meanwhile, statistics show pump petrol or gas prices in Russia are at an all-time high. Currently, prices are rising 3% a month, though much more in some regions. It should also be pointed out, though, the cost is about half what Western Europe pays for a litre. I mean, it used to be cheap as chips. I mean, virtually, they're pumping it out there by the megaton in Russia. So you're going to expect fuel to be exceptionally cheap, but it has massively increased in price. And they are rationing it in certain areas and other areas really struggling to get it at all. Now, speaking of oil, and I don't think this had anything to do with the war, I almost reported this the other day. There was an oil leak in Russian Novorossiysk the other day, and that's gone into the Black Sea. It's turned out to be much bigger than initially reported. The slick now measures 350 square kilometers after the latest ecological catastrophe, this time in Novorossiysk. It's spreading out towards both Anapa, which previously had all of that oil from the breaking up of those very unseaworthy ships, those container ships that will not contain those tankers that were, I think, supposed to be used on rivers. They were out in the rough seas on the Black Sea, and they broke up and caused all that oil slick and spillage. Now there's another one coming from Novorossiysk. It's spreading out towards both Anapa and occupied Crimea. Okay, what else do we have? So NATO's easternmost member states are grappling with a sharp rise in radio and satellite interference, with Baltic governments accusing Russia of positioning equipment for electronic warfare close to their borders. That's according to Bloomberg. Obviously, this is in the context of Ursula von der Leyen's plane going from Poland to Bulgaria, having electronic warfare, interfering with it, and having to land using maps, which some are saying was essentially an attempted assassination on Ursula von der Leyen. Authorities in the Baltic states say the interference has significantly escalated in recent months, affecting air and maritime communications, including the GPS systems. Jacek Tarasinski, a research fellow at the state-funded Centre for Eastern Studies in Warsaw, said, quote, "Russia is continuously testing NATO, probing both our military and political responses," end quote, as part of an effort to, quote, "exploit divisions among allies and undermine the cohesion of the alliance." What is Europe going to do about that? This is a form of attack on Europe. There's no doubt about it. Call it hybrid warfare or call it warfare. It is conflict. Now, France has quietly told hospitals to get ready for mass casualty scenarios by March 2026, with a capacity for up to 50,000 wounded troops. So they are gaming this situation whereby escalation might lead to Europe being at war with Russia. And they are saying quietly on the side, are we prepared? Are our hospitals prepared? We need to maybe think about provisions for 50,000 wounded troops. Do we have enough blood? Do we have enough logistic? Officials are stressing it's precautionary planning. It's not a forecast of war. So we are going to be at war, therefore X, Y, and Z. But actually, probably quite sensibly, putting in some contingency plans there. Putin, when asked by Robert Fitzo, "How are you doing?" he said, "I'm alive." And that's already good. But then Fitzo was like, "Today, we, the EU, are like that frog at the bottom of the well, thinking the sky is only as big as we see, but the world is different." Putin said, "Russia never had, does not have, and will not have the desire to attack anyone." Hysteria in the EU on this is provocation or incompetence. Under Trump, the US began to hear Russia. Oh, he's loving a bit of Trump, is old Putin. Oh, Trump is listening to us. Trump's our guy. That pretty much tells you all you need to know. Right. So just so I come to the end, I want to highlight a couple of things. I'm going to link them in the description below alongside the Car for Ukraine campaign that we're fundraising for. I was on my friend's small podcast that's just been resurrected. It's literally, there's only like 7 views on this so far. So go and check it out. It ended up being a really massive chat. So they split it, as I suggested, into 2, where we first talk about Ukraine, Russia, and US politics. And then we have the bonus bit where just me and Jack, Jack and Andy to begin with, talking about, or Jack, Andy, and I talking about Ukraine and geopolitics in that respect. Then we went on to American politics. So they split that off, and it's a bonus, Labor Day bonus. I think that was a lovely chat. Great to speak to them. Go and help out their little podcast there, and please like and watch that and share it around and whatnot. So that is there. And then I want to show you this, and this reminds, or at least a part of this. So this is the Odessa concert orchestra of Odessa Military Academy. This is very Lucky Chops. If you know a band called Lucky Chops, I saw them with Gogol Bordello in London some years back. Lucky Chops are go and watch Danza by Lucky Chops. That is brilliant. That's a YouTube rabbit hole for you. This is very Lucky Chopsy and it's awesome. This is Nirvana, Odessa Military style. That's some sexy sousaphone action. Let's just marvel in some musical madness and brilliance. Thank you to the concert orchestra of the Odessa Military Academy for playing this out. Take care. Speak soon.